pride, passion, and pageantry of college football lives here. This is the Paul Finebaum Show, Hour 1 podcast.
This might be college football heaven.
Friday has arrived. The weekend is upon us, one of the biggest weekends of the year, the Super Bowl. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. We have a lot of other things to do, and of course, when we left you last night, we were leading into some major basketball games. We'll talk about that as well with our first guest. Let's start with some headlines and how Nick Saban helped inspire NIL legislation. By the way, is there anything in the world that Nick Saban has not played a role in? We'll talk to RJ about that story coming up here in just a few minutes. Is it 2007 all over again? Well, it was last night in Knoxville for the first time since then. Tennessee knocked off UConn. You may remember who the coach was for UConn then, same one that lost last night. Pat Summitt was the last coach at Tennessee to win, but that has changed now. We'll talk about that as well. And our next guest is joining us from Austin, Texas, where he's got a big one coming up here on Sunday as well. He won a big one last night against Vanderbilt. Coach Vic Schaefer, we have talked to you many times over the years. Coach, it is great to see you. How are you?
Paul, good to see you. Thank you for having me today. Doing great. Just another day. Obviously excited about seeing my team today. They played awfully well last night, beat a really good, well-coached Vanderbilt team. Shea Ralph's doing a great job there, and now we got to get ready for our second opportunity with South Carolina on Sunday.
Well, you know all about playing Dawn Staley in South Carolina. You battled many, many times before. Since your last meeting on January 12th, your team has been on quite a roll. Let's talk about where you are right now before we get to Sunday.
Yeah, just, we're down a starter and still being able to have some success. Lost to Leah Moore 4 games ago and weren't really expecting it. And now that we have that, just trying to adjust on the fly. As you know, we lost a starter last year, and the kids were able to respond. And we had a great run and a great season. And this team has responded in these last 4 games, and we've had some tough games. But they've been able to find a way to win. And so it's just kind of part of it. It's the part I hate as a coach. I don't like losing kids. I don't like injuries. And this kid had really been fighting it all year and gutting it out. But at some point, enough was enough. So we're still rocking along. And obviously, again, proud of my team, proud of these kids. They continue to play really hard, and so we're excited about the opportunity on Sunday.
So you're down a couple of players, but you do have Madison Booker, and she's one of the best players in America. Tell us about her.
Special. As good of a player she is, she's even more special as a young lady. Just a kid that's just so humble, worker, invests in her craft. She just is really someone that brings it every day. For being so young at 19, I ask her all the time to give me more in leadership because she's ready. To me, that's the next step in her maturation process. But just a really difficult guard, and what I mean by that, she's a difficult person to guard. She's got a lot of a skill set in her bag, and it's just she's a lot of fun to coach. Like I said, doesn't have a bad day, works extremely hard, spends countless hours in the gym, and just a really high character kid and a workaholic, really. I mean, that's the best way to describe her. So love her, love seeing her every day. And again, I think the rest of our team, we've really embraced trying to get past hard, because winning is really hard, Paul. 23-2 is really hard. And these kids have done it. And again, Madison is such a big part of what we do.
Coach, you were able to get a big one last night, as you said. Sunday already sold out. The national audience will be there. You know Dawn Staley very well. She is literally at the epicenter of the sport right now. Describe your relationship and what it's like to play her again.
Yeah, again, I think there's mutual respect between both of us and our programs. We've certainly had some knockdown dragouts over the years. And again, what she's done building that program at Columbia, South Carolina, much like we did in Starkville, Mississippi. I mean, it's really difficult. And the only thing harder than building it is sustaining it. And she's certainly doing that as well. So, you know, we know what's coming. We went up there, you know, about a month ago, and place was rocking. We didn't quite handle it as well as I'd like to have. We did respond in the second half, but you just can't get behind the eight ball like we did with them in the first half. And so we've got to learn from that and grow and be ready to go on Sunday at tip, not after halftime. But you know, Coach Staley and I, you know, we've talked before about a number of different things in our game and in our sport. And so again, we've had quite a few experiences with our teams over the course of our career. Good thing I'm not having to play her one-on-one. That might be a problem. She had a much better collegiate and professional career than I did. I ran out of ability really quick in junior college.
You made up for it, though, as a coach. And let me end there, Coach, because you know, we spent a lot of time this week talking about the men's side. But the women's side, we are used to it being elite. But it keeps getting better, and it's gotten better now that Texas is in the SEC. What is it like to go through the rigors of that league once again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare, you know, and it lasts for about 2 months every year. It's you know, it's shark infested waters, and you got to know the intensity and the level of physicality, competitive spirit that each of these teams in this league possess. And you know, I knew that going into the year. I knew what we were getting into, but trying to convey that to your players until they've experienced it, you know, it's hard. But I think now after 10 games, they get it. They see it. They know exactly what I've been trying to impart to them for a while now, and they understand it. And no disrespect to the league that we came from, but the SEC is just different. And you know, it's a highly competitive, well-coached league, and lots of skilled players. And so it's something that, you know, I think we've gotten used to. Our kids are, and you know, we've responded in a pretty good way after that hiccup the last time we played South Carolina.
Coach, big weekend ahead. Thank you for joining us. It's always great to see you.
Oh, great to see you. Praise the Lord and hook 'em horns.
You bet. Vic Schaefer, we've known that one before. When we used to see him in Starkville, and now he's back in the league, of course, at the University of Texas. We have a long way to go. We only have just begun on a Friday afternoon. RJ joins us talking about this. Is this a new law that Saban will influence, or is it just a lot of talk? A lot of time for your phone calls as well, right here at 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We are back. We want to get your phone calls coming in here, and let's start with Jackson up next. Hey, Jackson.
Well, Paul, I've got some fun facts for you today involving Super Bowl weekend. So, you know how we've never had a team that's three-peated in the Super Bowl era? Well, we've had a couple teams. Well, one team, really. They did it twice in the NFL championship era. The Green Bay Packers three-peated from 1929 to 1931. And, of course, they three-peated as NFL champs from 1965 and 1967. I got to tell you, they ran the show in the NFL in that time. And I will tell you, though, I'm excited about Ryan Grubb becoming the Alabama OC. That is going to be awesome to see Ryan Grubb reuniting with Kayla DeBoer as they will be making magic together again in Tuscaloosa, just like they did at Washington, Fresno State.
Thank you for the call. I asked this question because from the moment that Ryan Grubb was fired by the Seattle Seahawks, Alabama fans looked at him as a magic bullet, as if Ryan Grubb coming to Alabama to run an offense that essentially is Kalen DeBoer's would suddenly undo all the inefficiencies of last year. And then, of course, the player the other day who said, we're not going to be late for meetings, we're not going to be doing this, we're not going to be doing that. I asked the question, are Alabama fans on the right track here? Do they really believe that bringing a guy who walked out on Kalen DeBoer a year ago to go to a job that he's already been fired from, coming back into the system, is the answer? And will it undo all the discipline issues and the lackadaisical approach that many calling here believe that DeBoer helped create last year? I don't know. I'm just wondering if Alabama fans are on the right track here, or are they predictably delusional? Let's get to the calls, and Swamp Dog is up next.
Hello, Mr. Paul. Thank you for taking my call today.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank you for answering my question yesterday about the basketball thing,
Right.
And I got to say, though, that I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Oh, yeah.
It's even more complicated than I thought.
One of the great Bob Seger lyrics of all time. Yeah, the more you know about that issue, the more confused you are.
Yes. So that'll all come out in the wash. We'll leave it at that. That's what I say. Yeah, you're right. That is a Bob Seger line. I stole
Thank
it.
you for reminding me.
Yes. Yeah. But I want to. You asked me about going to Judge John's preaching service, and the main reason I can't do that is because it's on Super Bowl Sunday. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
The game's not till 6:30 though.
Well, I'll be preoccupied that day, all day, with the Super Bowl because I want to see the Crimson Dogs. You know who that is? Take down the mighty Chiefs in that game right there. That's what I'm going after. And please don't tell John from St. Louis that Kansas City is actually in Missouri, because if he gets that information, I don't know if he knows it or not. Maybe he's forgotten it because he's
he lives in St. Louis, and people in St. Louis do not care for the folks over in Kansas City. It's a long way across the state.
Well, I just hope I didn't spill the beans and get him becoming more of a pain in the neck than he already is, especially to you. I think he writes down things to argue with you about, so he could just...
There's no way he could be more of a pain in the neck than he already is. Thanks for the call. Irvin is up next in Georgia. Hello, Irvin. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
We are doing great.
And I know I'm going to ruffle some Alabama fans' feathers, but this Grubb guy, I don't know who he is. He's probably going to manifest himself good with Caleb DeBoer, but Alabama fans, let me tell you something. Nick Saban is gone. Bear Bryant is gone. You guys are scared. You're nervous about what's to come. Deal with it and be done with it. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you very much. A lot of people agree with what Irvin just said. Judge John is up next.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Robert was talking about yesterday on people who got NILs at Tennessee would save 5-point-something% on income tax. Well, I've thought a little bit more about that, and I'm concerned that these young people, 17, 18, 19 years old, are getting all that money and don't have any ability to take care of it. It's like water running through their hands. So I think that a university ought not to turn over money until that person has a financial advisor. I'll give you an example. When I was practicing law, I made a good settlement for a lady, and she spent every bit of it on a big motor home, biggest one they made at the time. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from Florida, and she totaled the thing and didn't have a dime's worth of insurance on it. Now, you talk about blowing it. They blow it sometimes. So my thought is, let's require them to have a financial advisor before we turn any money over to them. I've got one other thing I want to say, Paul. Bernard Baruch said that a man approached a Little League baseball game one afternoon. He asked the boy in the dugout what the score was. The boy responded, 18-0, and we're behind. Boy, said the spectator, I'll bet you're discouraged. Why should I be discouraged, replied the little boy. We haven't even got to bat yet.
Thank you, Judge. Justin is up next. Hello, Justin.
Hey, Paul, I wanted to ask you about, the expectations with Florida and Billy Napier going into next season. Florida fans, we expect, to make the playoffs next year, but I'll be honest with you, when you look at Florida's schedule next year, it's going to be very hard for them to make the playoffs because it's a very difficult schedule when you got Texas and Georgia, add LSU and add A&M. I mean, it's a very hard schedule, but is Billy Napier going to be able to keep his job if he don't make the playoff next year?
Yeah, listen, I mean, let's take one at a time. At LSU, at Miami, that's the beginning of the year. Texas at home, at A&M. I mean, would you be surprised if I told you that the Gators would have as many as 3 or 4 losses in the first half of the season? That's before Georgia comes along, at Ole Miss. I don't know how in the world they're going to make the playoffs. And as far as what Florida will do, I mean, it's pretty obvious Scott Strickland has been Billy Napier's number one caretaker. He got away with it this year, but I mean, I don't know what the expectations are. I know it in the past. It used to be championship or bust for the Gators. Now it seems like the expectations have been dumbed down, where losing 4 or 5 games is okay.
Yeah, but it's not okay to me because I expect to compete for championships, and for if the people in charge of Florida think that's okay to lose 4 or 5 games year in and year out, then that's not acceptable.
You can use the schedule as an excuse during a transition year. Next year is not. Florida ended up having a really good season this year, and another subpar season to me would indicate where the program is.
Yes. Yeah, I just don't. It's going to be very hard for Billy Napier to live up to the expectations when you look at the schedule that they have, and it's going to be hard.
Anyone who seriously talks about them being a playoff team is just blowing smoke.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard. Even with DJ Lagway as quarterback, I mean, it's still going to be very difficult.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to tell me.
I just worry about him being able to. I just worry about him being able to keep his job because that's what the expectations are.
I think he overperformed last year. Now, if he underperforms this year, does the AD come out and say, well, he a little bit of a setback? But I don't know. I mean, I think it's time for Gator fans to really not so much to get rid of Billy Napier if he doesn't have a good season. It's just to figure out what they really expect out of a football coach. Thank you for the call. I do appreciate it. Bash is up next. Hey, Bash, go right ahead.
Am I on?
You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't see me on the screen. What's going on, Bash brother? How's your Friday going so far?
It's going great. What about you?
Can't complain after last night. Paul, what do you think? Patrick Surtain out of Alabama is the reigning Defensive Player of the Year this year.
Is that supposed to change my disposition?
What disposition was there before? I was just making an acknowledgement that a player from Alabama.
I think that's great. Good for Patrick Surtain and the Denver Broncos. That's really fantastic, Bash.
Right. Thank you, Paul. I was going to use that to transition to an argument I wanted to ask you about. So now that Nick Saban has retired and it's like we're entering this Kalen DeBoer era. We all know what Nick Saban's like his bread and butter was, being a specialist on the defense, specifically with the defensive backs. Do you think now, Paul, that Nick Saban has retired, that the era of dominant defensive backs in the Alabama depth chart will cease to exist at this point?
Yes, I do.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you myself. I mean, I do think the ones returning back next year, Savion Brown, Keon Sabb, Damani Jackson. I was a little upset that our own second example of Devontae Smith is in the transfer portal and he won't be coming back. But I think that they have some potential. I mean, would you say that, though, last year, Paul, that when we had Malachi Moore, Caleb Downs, Terrion Arnold, and Kool-Aid McKinstry, was that the best collection of defensive backs that you've ever seen?
I think so. I might go back at one other iteration, but certainly it's probably the best. And again, that was Saban's specialty.
Sure.
And you're going to see next year the effect of Saban. Really, I don't think you saw it completely in 24 because DeBoer still had a number of those players. These are now his players. There's a few remaining, but for the most part, especially on that side of the ball, it's all on him.
Agreed. And on Womack now that he's returning back again for the second year. And
by the way, I think the defense was incredibly improved down the stretch. I thought the bowl game, the defense did enough to win. Even in the debacle in Norman, the defense was not the problem.
No, the only time the defense was a problem this year, Paul, was when they gave up 40 points to the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Well, I agree that there were a lot of issues there. I think the biggest problem in that game, Bash, was the preparation. Kalen DeBoer took a few extra victory laps, and it bit
after
him.
That Georgia win.
Hey, thanks for the call. We are locked and loaded here on a Friday afternoon. We are taking more of your phone calls, a few more guests, but mostly just chilling out here on the Super Bowl Friday. The weekend has arrived. We are deep into the first week of February, and we're back after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
So we just put this out on social media. What is the one must-have for your Super Bowl party? Tickets to the game, not to mention the food and vibe. We're getting some good reaction coming in. Buffalo chicken dip and sliders. Barbecue chicken nachos. Brad in Macon, GA is calling next.
Mr. Paul, as always, thanks for taking my call, and happy Finebaum Friday, brother.
Thank you, Brad.
Hey, man, did we ever find out what happened to John from Louisville? We ever find out what happened to him?
We have not.
Well, I want to tell you something, Mr. Paul. Let me make a nomination who can take his place, because he's one of the boringest damn callers you have on the show going these days, and that's that Judge John. He calls in from Tennessee. I mean, he fills in for John from Louisville just like a glove.
Except John from Louisville was a little more contemporary.
Yeah, he had his own way of doing things. He's kind of a pompous ass, to be honest with you, and I shouldn't say that not knowing what we...
Well, listen, we have, I'm trying to think, we have at least two different, maybe three different former judges calling in. One thing judges have in common is a level of arrogance and complete disregard for the rest of us common people, because they get to sit on that high bench wearing a robe with a gavel in their hand, and they're all the same.
They're all special, and you're right. They all have that little bit of a chip on their block. But
remember how that guy wanted to lock Jim from Tuscaloosa up by the way, not that anybody really likes Jim, but it was still out of order.
Definitely out of order. But Paul, I heard Chris in South Carolina the other day talking about a belt. He's going to win the belt, and he's talking about he's going to take it from Legend. But correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but to win it, you actually have to be in it. And last year, I didn't think I saw Chris's name in the tournament last year.
Well, he'll be in there this year. He'll be in a play-in game.
Well, I was thinking more like an NIL game where you could put your secondary people that just really wasn't good enough to be in the big deal, to be in the NIL type thing. But him and his twin brother Johnny Jackass. He wasn't in it last year either, was he?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But that's coming up here in a few weeks, by the way.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how y'all do the bracket this year. It's last year I got a bad draw. I had to go up against Larry, and you kind of promised me that since Larry liked to, partake in a few beverages, that I'd have a good easy chance winning, Paul. And he took me to the cleaners, Paul.
Well, listen, you were more of a newbie then, and Larry is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But I'll tell
you what, this year I think the thing to do is just grab his oxygen tent, and you'll be in good shape.
Well, Paul, enjoy your weekend, and you and your staff enjoy your weekend, and be safe. And we'll hear from you next week, brother.
You got it. Take care. You bet. Benny is in California. Hello, Benny.
Hey, Paul, a long-time listener, first-time caller. I just want to tell you I love the show. I know this is the weekend going into the Super Bowl, but I already miss college football. I'm a diehard Alabama fan, even though we're playing, great in basketball. Love what Coach Oates is doing there at the team, and hopefully we'll get to the Final Four and get a natty in that. That would be amazing. But real quickly, if I can tell you a story of why I became an Alabama fan all the way out here in California. Is that okay?
You bet.
Oh, okay. So I was a diehard out here in California where I live. You're either a Niners fan or a Raiders fan, and I loved the pirate type of Raider symbol. And I became a big, huge Kenny Stabler fan back in the '70s. So I'm dating myself here a little bit. Loved Kenny Stabler, and then of course found out that he came out of Alabama. So I was lucky enough to watch, the Bear Bryant in the late '70s winning those national championships. And I'm not going to lie to you. To me, Bear Bryant was always the greatest coach, and when they first hired Nick Saban, I actually thought, this is not a good hire. I just don't think it's going to work out. So that shows you how much I know about college football. I love my team, obviously, but I'm excited about it still with DeBoer. I want to give him another chance for another year. It was tough to come to the SEC, especially coming out of Washington, and I am excited about Grubbs coming in. And what are your thoughts? Because I'm thinking also that we got a lot of players coming back on defense. Obviously, the quarterback situation is kind of up in the air, but do you think we have a good chance of making it to the playoffs this year?
Yeah, listen, I think Grubb is an upgrade over what they had. Grubb's journey is a little annoying to me, the fact that he took the job, moved to Tuscaloosa, and then 3 weeks later left. But that's really between Grubb and Kalen DeBoer. But you have to remember, Grubb is only an offensive coach. He cannot change the players on the field. He can guide them better. And I think the biggest mistake last year, I think, in retrospect, was gambling the entire season on Jalen Milroe. It was a tough situation to deal with because he was the incumbent quarterback. He was the best quarterback, but he was so inconsistent that he created problems for Alabama a number of times and cost them games, where this year will be different. So I think that's good. The schedule is not dramatically different than it was a year ago. And I think Alabama is a borderline playoff team.
Well, I appreciate that. You're the best of the best. You know it all. You're the best by far. This show is number one. I got a lot of guys out here. Even listen, I have a group of guys that we have beers on Fridays, and some of them are Michigan fans. Guys even from Toledo. A guy that played at UCLA back in the day. Minnesota Gophers. I'm a diehard, and also a Notre Dame fan who is very, very proud of his team getting in there. Of course, I'm a diehard Alabama fan. So I hope you're right. And like I said, the people calling in saying that Alabama fans have to realize it's over. All I can say to this, we were blessed not only once but twice to have not only Bear Bryant but Nick Saban. And I hope that we win a national championship. That's, quote, the standard. But I'm proud of my team no matter what. If Alabama lost every game, I'd still be I'd still be rooting for them. But they're not going to be losing all their games. And I hope next year they're back in it again. And once again, hey, hi to Randy and the crew. You guys do an awesome job, and roll Tide.
Thank you very much, Benny, calling us from the Bay Area. We are heading to the break. A number of guests remaining. Your phone calls around the corner. We are working our way through the first hour here on a Friday.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
How about this? We got Florida, number 2 team in the country, at Arkansas, ranked 15th. That's 7 p.m. And then the number 1 team hosting Kentucky. You cannot get any better than Friday Night Heights, straight ahead. And let's check in with Tristan in Gainesville. Hello, Tristan.
Hey, Paul. Big fan of the show.
Thank you.
So just calling in. Recently, Billy Napier's been hiring a bunch of assistant D coordinators and hasn't addressed anything on the offensive side of the ball and will be retaining play calling duties. And as a Billy Napier pessimist, I'm not a big fan of this and just wanted to call in and hear your thoughts.
Well, I generally don't like any coach calling his own plays. I think there's so many things happening now in college football that you take away from the overall leadership that you need. And I haven't really been that impressed with his handling of the offense until now, and I think it is a mistake.
I agree. A lot of play calls on fourth down I disagree with.
It got better last year, but one of the issues for Billy Napier has been too many men on the field, clock management, and that's even more complicated when you're on the headset calling the plays.
Exactly. The little issues that it irks me.
Minor things that cost them games. Hey, Tristan, thank you very, very much. Let's check in with Brad, who is up next. Hey, Brad.
Good afternoon, Paul, and happy Friday to you, sir.
Thank you.
I listened to Vic Schaefer's interview there and call in, and excuse me. I think I caught him on a little boo-boo he made. He was talking about the wonderful job Don Staley's making at Tennessee, and he also said that, and that's what we're doing here at Mississippi State. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I thought he said that's what we did at Mississippi State.
Oh, it may have been but it sure sounded like that's what we're doing at Mississippi State.
Yeah, well, let me assure you, I've seen Vic out in Austin. He knows where he is.
Oh, no doubt. And I got to know him well too when he was at State. I'm still a Mississippi State fan. Got to cook some barbecue for him. But I wanted to mention that, and then also talk a bit about the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. You know, Mississippi State's got defensive players on both teams. Who do you think is going to make the biggest impact in the game? Chris Jones or Darius Slay? You know, you've got incredible linemen. I know Fletcher Cox is gone now from the Eagles, but you got Chris Jones there, and then you've got Darius Slay as the backer on the other side. So who do you think is going to make the biggest impact?
I'd probably lean a little bit toward Chris. Hey, thank you, Brad. Appreciate the call. Rick is in Houston next. Hello, Rick.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. How you doing?
We are doing great.
Paul, I really get irritated sometimes when these Alabama fans call in and start yapping about how their position groups are the greatest ever. I mean, do they think that they're the only school that's ever had great defensive back position groups?
I think so.
Can I just read a few names off of 2010 LSU to you?
Go ahead.
Morris Claiborne, Patrick Peterson, Ron Brooks, Harold Simon, Brandon Taylor, Tyrann Mathieu, Eric Reed, Craig Lawston. That's a pretty good group, wouldn't you say?
That's not bad.
I mean, you know, I know LSU people like to call ourselves wide receiver U, and we've done pretty good too. But I mean, we're not. You know, I'll be the first to admit we're not the only school that's had great wide receivers. So it just gets on my nerves. You know, and I don't know what else to say. But Paul, this whole thing with Chris thinking he's going to win Caller of the Year, I think he's got delusions of grandeur there.
Well, I think he has had that since his first day on the show. Hey, Rick, great to hear from you. Johnny is up next.
Hey, Paul, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks. Still staying in contact with G. G's doing good. I want to give a couple of shout-outs. I was in Athens last night. That's the first time I've seen Dawn Staley, South Carolina team in person. And before the game, she did something a little unusual, never seen done before in college basketball. She came down and shook hands of all the Georgia staff, all the way down to the trainers, and then went all the way down media row at the table and shook everybody's hand from the Georgia bench all the way down to the South Carolina bench. And I'd never seen that done before, and I thought that showed a lot of class,
That really is cool.
And I did want to also give a shout-out to our Philly Dogs. G and I was talking about it. I've ordered G a Philly Dogs T-shirt. Wish them luck in the Super Bowl. Also, a special shout-out to Nakobe Dean. He was the captain. He season-ending injury. And Nakobe has had surgery. He's recovering. He isn't in New Orleans with the team. But just wanted to shout out to Nakobe for a real quick, hopefully it's not going to be quick, recovery and get him back 100% next year, Paul. And as always, thanks a lot for taking my call. I appreciate what you do for everybody. You do so much for people that call all over the country.
Johnny, I appreciate you thanking me, but you deserve a tremendous amount of credit. The work that you've done helping facilitate things, especially with our friend G, really is unprecedented in the history of this show.
Well, I thank you, and I really appreciate that. And G and I will continue. I'll go by and visit him, every week or so, and we'll sit down and watch the show. And we'll try to call back in together one afternoon when we're watching the show, Paul.
Well, we look forward to that, Johnny. You be well. Richard Johnson will join us next. We'll talk about this law being proposed in Georgia that Nick Saban may have been at the center of.